The world of Fallout is a lie. The irradiated desert wasteland full of people struggling to survive isn't what would happen if the bombs we see in the Fallout show dropped in the real world. But the reality is so much worse. Strap on your Pip Boys, loyal theorists, as we explore the real fallout of this great war. Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that doesn't want to set the world on fire, it just wants to start a flame in your heart. So believe it or not, but for as much as I love movies, I am also a lifelong gamer. I did get my start editing for game theory, after all, and the games I love the most? RPGs like Fallout. No joke, I had a cat named after the game director at Fallout's developer Bethesda. R.I.P. Todd Howard, you were a good cat. If you don't know, Fallout takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where nuclear war has destroyed most of human civilization. The few survivors have banded together in makeshift cities and raider gangs pillaging the wasteland or inside vaults designed to keep their residents safe.
Now that right there is Vault 4's 3-foot thick lead casing, strong enough to keep out the rads and the reds.
And all of that is wrapped in a pretty bow of a retro-future aesthetic, dark humor, and over-the-top violence. This is one franchise that does not pull its punches. So why are we talking about this game franchise on Film Theory today? Well, I was both excited and terrified to hear that they were adapting the series into a television show over on Amazon Prime. Would it live up to the franchise's highest heights, or be broken and janky? Well, I'm happy to say that the Fallout show is more Last of Us than Halo, a faithful adaptation that features all of the same brutal comedy and social commentary that makes Fallout so special.
Listen to me. Hollywood is the past. Forget Hollywood. The future, my friend, is products. You're a product, I'm a product. The end of the world is a product.
All while using art directly out of the games and being a pretty dang good TV show on top of it. I have to say, I did get some pretty good feelings on this one when they proudly proclaimed to be from the studio who brought us free 2-day shipping. It just feels so Fallout.
Oh my gosh, Lee, are you stealing another one of my franchises?
No. Get out of here, Tom. This one's mine. I was there when Fisto told me to assume the position, when there were cars falling out of the sky in Fallout 4. I've spent more time modding these games than some people have spent playing them, Tom. Come back and get mad when I steal Minecraft or something, I don't know. Regardless, while most of the Fallout show takes place a full 2 centuries after the end of the world, the opening scene decides to do something a little bit different, instead starting the day the bombs fell. Here, one of our protagonists, Cooper Howard, sees the blasts ignite all across the Los Angeles skyline. Desperate to get to safety, Cooper and his daughter head for the Hollywood Hills. It's a chilling scene. Los Angeles is more or less wiped off the face of the map. Neighbors and friends turn on one another. Everyone is running for their lives. But of course, I wouldn't be a very good theorist if scenes like this didn't also trigger my scientific curiosity. After all, Cooper and his daughter are awfully close to some of these explosions, and it made me think, could they even survive this? Would Cooper have even had the opportunity to make it past this day and link up with the other characters in the show? I just had to dig into it, and after running the numbers, well, the answer shocked me, and it's gonna blow this show wide open. See, loyal theorists, if you look at this scene, you'll find that the world that this show, that the entire Fallout franchise sets up, is a lie. More likely than not, none of these characters in the opening scene would have made it, Cooper included, and few of the future characters would have even had the opportunity to be born. The fallout of Fallout would have been much worse than even this series could have imagined. So step into your power armor, friends. We're headed into the wasteland to find out why. To start, let's all catch ourselves up on what we're talking about here. First off, the show is actually set in the same canon as the games, which itself is a challenge since most of the games all have multiple endings, but that's a headache for another day. Regardless, the show also has the distinction of being amongst some of the earliest and the latest content we see in the Fallout timeline. Yeah, though the main events of the show take place in 2296, around 9 years after the events of Fallout 4, there are numerous flashbacks that take place in or before 2077 and the Great War that destroyed the world. And though this isn't the first time we've seen the bombs drop in the franchise, it is the best look at the devastating event that the series has offered to date. Because of that, we can now do all sorts of cool stuff, like figure out exactly how bad these bombs would have been for the world, and specifically for Cooper here. Let's start out by figuring out exactly where the bombs dropped in this scene. This part of the show takes place in Los Angeles, and we get a nice aerial shot as 3 nukes are detonated over the city. This right here gives us all of the info we need to pinpoint these explosions, all thanks to this building. That there in the corner of this shot is the Griffith Observatory, a famous landmark that you may recognize from everything from Terminator to La La Land to Grand Theft Auto 5.
Davey!
Using this, we can hop on Google Earth and line it up with the show, letting us know that we're here somewhere up in the mountains north of Hollywood. You may also notice that unlike the show, there aren't any skyscrapers here in this part of LA in the real world. But this would still make sense given that this portion of the Fallout timeline takes place a full 50 years after the present day, and that the world of Fallout diverged from our own shortly after World War II, so we can forgive this little bit of artistic license taken with the LA skyline. Regardless, using this information, we can figure out roughly where the epicenter of these three explosions are. The one closest to Cooper is just southeast of the observatory, putting ground zero right about here in Hollywood. The second explosion is even further southeast, putting it smack dab in downtown LA. And the third explosion off in the distance there is quite a bit further south. I'd estimate that this bomb was dropped straight out of Compton. Finally, the very first bomb that sends Cooper headed for the hills is a bit tougher to identify. But because we can see the edge of it in this aerial shot over on the right, we can use that to estimate that it would be roughly here just south of Koreatown. Admittedly, that is a bit of a guess based on our limited data, and it may be a few blocks in either direction, but trust me, it won't actually end up mattering that much in the end. Okay, now that we've identified where the nukes went off, we need to figure out exactly how high they were in the air when they exploded. But wait, why would they be exploding in the air? Well, we've gone into great detail about this in previous videos, but the long and short of it, detonating an explosive device in the air actually provides far more destructive power versus when it explodes on the ground. This concept is known as an air burst, and it's actually how the atomic bombs deployed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki were detonated in World War II. And this mostly tracks with what we see here in Fallout. If you go through this shot here frame by frame, though it's a bit difficult to make out, we can see that the center of the flash, and therefore the explosion, is just over the top of the buildings here in Hollywood. Unfortunately, like we just explained, these buildings aren't actually real, so we can't use them to get an exact measurement of this height. So what we're gonna do instead is use the tallest building currently in Los Angeles, the Wilshire Grand Center, as a benchmark. This building stands at 1,100 feet or 335 meters tall, which sounds reasonable for an airburst like this. But again, as we will soon see, going a dozen meters up or down isn't gonna change the end result that much. Finally, the last piece of the puzzle we need here is just how powerful these bombs are. The yield or power of bombs this big is measured in terms of just how much TNT it would take to get the same amount of power. So, for context, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of 15 kilotons, or 15,000 tons of TNT. But how big are these bombs in Fallout? Thankfully, this is where the fact that the games in the show take place in the same universe comes in clutch. See, packaged with every copy of the original Fallout 1 was the Vault Dweller's Survival Guide. Basically, it was the player's manual, but written from the point of view of the in-universe vault tech. Man, I miss when games came with cool inserts like this in the box. Regardless, the survival guide explains that, quote, "The yield of a modern strategic warhead is, with few exceptions, now typically in the range of 200 to 750 kilotons. That's actually quite a bit smaller than the biggest bombs the US has today, which sit at around 1.2 megatons or 1,200 kilotons of TNT. But using the info from the survival guide, we're gonna say that the three smaller explosions we see are towards the bottom of that range, around 200 kilotons in size, while the big bomb that started the whole sequence is at the top of that scale, approximately 750 kilotons. With bombs like that, you can see why they say that war never changes. And you can experience that for yourself thanks to the sponsor for today's theory, War Thunder, available now free for consoles and PC. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever, with over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships, painstakingly recreated down to the tiniest detail, including their individual components, crew, and realistic damage taken during battle. I've always been a buff for World War II history, trivia, and movies, so seeing all the iconic tanks and planes from the 40s in-game, realistically rendered with authentic sound effects, it's just incredible. But the game's not just limited to World War II. You can find everything from 1920s biplanes to modern-day fighter jets from over 10 major nations in War Thunder, all given the same insane attention to detail. So if any of this sounds appealing to you, please go join the War Thunder community, 70 million players strong, and engage in some PvP war games perfect for fans of military history, all by clicking the link in the description below. And hey, for a limited time, new and returning players who haven't played for 6 months will receive a huge bonus pack that nets you multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of a premium account. Once again, thank you so much to War Thunder for sponsoring today's theory, and let's hop back into the explosive results of Fallout. And now with all of that info, where the bombs fell, how high they were, and how big they were, we can plug all of that into this online tool Nuke Map to simulate exactly how much devastation these bombs would wreak across the City of Angels. And everyone's dead. See what I meant earlier when I said a few meters here or there wasn't ultimately gonna matter? Yeah, but regardless of where Cooper was in these mountains, whether it was at the Griffith Observatory or the Hollywood sign, or basically anywhere in the greater Los Angeles area, he'd be dead long before he knew what hit him, and longer before he could mutate into the ghoulish desperado we see later in the story. Now, we could go into painful detail about exactly what from these explosions would be killing Cooper and his daughter, but honestly, we've talked about the effects of these sorts of nuclear explosions a lot in the past, and just look at this map. I think the broad strokes are going to cover it just fine. At this range from these explosions, Cooper would have been hit by an overpressure blast wave of just around 4.81 psi. That's enough to break glass and just about enough to burst your eardrum, if he even survived that long for the shockwave to hit. See, the radiant heat from the explosions would have hit him first, traveling at the speed of light, cooking every square inch of his body. Thermal dosages are typically measured in calories per square centimeter. And just so you have a frame of reference, third-degree burns set in at around 8 calories per square centimeter. The first and largest bomb in Koreatown here in Fallout would have been hitting Cooper and everyone else at that birthday party with 12.5 calories per square centimeter, which would be almost certainly lethal, while the closest bomb in Hollywood would have followed shortly with another 26.3 calories per square centimeter. They'd basically be instantly cooked by these bombs, and even if Cooper and the rest were somehow able to survive all of that, the ionizing radiation released by the blasts would be getting to them in no time. In just an hour in this post-nuclear LA, Cooper would have been exposed to 1,720 rims, or rads, of radiation, enough to incapacitate you in 5 minutes and kill you within days. Again, for a frame of reference, even in the games like Fallout 4, just 1,000 rads is enough to cause your player character to keel over and die on the spot. Clearly, given what we know in Fallout lore and what we see here in the Fallout TV show, Cooper and everyone else we see in this opening scene just being so close to these 200 or 750 kiloton bombs would kill them instantly, rupturing their organs, vaporizing their skin, and irradiating their bodies. And normally, I'd be content to leave things here. That's a fun revelation about this show, putting this really cool scene in a new light using a combination of science and lore. This main character is dead, and we can prove it. Classic theorist stuff. But something about this whole thing was still bothering me. As I was watching the show and seeing these explosions, I couldn't help but think that they looked a little, well, small. I've done a surprising amount of research about nuclear explosions during my time here at Theorist, and though I'm no nuclear physicist, I do know that these bombs are supposed to be massive. Like, stretch up into the atmosphere massive. But these explosions are just not that. They're big, don't get me wrong, but they're not as large as they should be. So I decided to dive a little deeper into the data and found an interesting feature over on Nuke Map. See, once you detonate the bombs in the tool, you can export that data to Google Earth and see the scale of the mushroom clouds in all of their glory. But when I did this for the 200 and 750 kiloton nukes, this is what I got. If this looks like a confusing image to you, fair, it was to me too. It wasn't until I zoomed out that I realized that what we're seeing here, all of that black blob taking up so much of the image, that is the mushroom cloud we should be seeing if these nukes had a yield as powerful as Fallout lore says. Essentially, as he rides his horse on by the Griffith Observatory, Cooper would basically be inside of the mushroom cloud of the bomb detonated in Hollywood, and the height of these clouds should be as tall as 18 kilometers. There is simply no way that these bombs we see here in the show are as powerful as the Vault Dweller's survival guide told us. But we can figure out how strong they are based on what we see. Yeah, after playing around with Nuke Map a little bit more, I was able to create this, which is far more true to size of the clouds we see in the show. You want to take a wild guess at how powerful these bombs are? They're not 100 kilotons. They're not even 10 kilotons. In fact, the smaller bombs here have a yield of just 100 tons. 150th the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And